Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Welcome back. This is a video clip of Matt Gaetz, Republican from Florida, that started the so-called fiasco on the removal of McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Now, Matt Gaetz has got a lot of criticism, but the way things turned out, he was right. He was right after all. And this is very interesting. Now, this is a clip from another website that starts with R that I can't name because this algorithm will kill this video worse than they already do to me. So let's listen in, and I'll make comments along the way.
Have your own way, but when you get to that last group that will not support you, you cannot drag this on for days. You cannot drag this on for weeks. You cannot play into what Kevin McCarthy was working the whole time to try to get people to believe that the only person that could govern the Republican conference is Kevin McCarthy. So Emmer agrees that he's going to have his shot, but that it's going to be quick. So we get...
Now, if you remember Emmer, Congressman Emmer, I saw a video of him where he goes into detail how they should eliminate the Electoral College, and this guy's a Republican. So we dodged a bullet on that one, but let's continue on about what progressed.
Get that through the gestation system early yesterday. So as Emmer is withdrawing, Mark Molinaro, a moderate New York freshman Republican.
Now, Mark Molinaro is my congressman here in upstate New York. I live in Broome County in Binghamton. We're just above the Pennsylvania border in central upstate New York. It's called the Southern Tier. He is a freshman congressman. And I know Congressman Molinaro. I've talked to him several times. And he looks like he was the key player in how this transpired to make Mike Johnson the speaker. And I'm pretty proud of him, to be honest with you. You know, he's a moderate, and there's some things that, you know, I wish he would change a little bit his stance on. But overall, he's a mainstream Republican. And he suggests something that is just brilliant. It's just brilliant that he would suggest this. Now let's listen on.
Stands up at the microphone and says, well, instead of restarting this process and having a candidate forum and sending everybody home for a good cry, let's just take a non-binding poll on where people would be on the person who came in second to Tom Emmer, and that was Mike Johnson. And Elise Stefanik said, well, that's against the rules. The rules don't contemplate it. We can't do that. And brilliantly, Mark Molinaro says, then I move for unanimous consent that the rules be waived and we take a poll on whether or not Mike Johnson could be our speaker nominee.
Now, the reason why I think that he did that was two reasons. One, he's a smart guy, and that's the way he got around the objection from Congresswoman Stefanik, who does the Adirondacks and way upstate New York area, and also the fact that he's a freshman, and he doesn't see these rules as etched in stone. He hasn't been there for 8, 10, 15, 20 years, where he just goes along to get along. That was his way of trying to push the process along by waiving the rule. Yeah, it was brilliantly done because he doesn't have the mind think of a long-term congressman. So being a freshman was to his advantage. Let's listen on.
And guess who objects to that unanimous consent request? Kevin McCarthy.
Who was that?
Kevin McCarthy stands up and erupts and says, I object to doing a roll call on Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson was exasperated. All the times Johnson had voted for McCarthy, had carried his water, maybe even voted for some bills he didn't like because he was working toward the Republican conference's stated objectives under McCarthy. And here was the thing. It showed everyone that it was actually McCarthy who was working to knife Scalise. It was actually McCarthy who was working to knife Jim Jordan. It was McCarthy working to knife everyone. And he hadn't yet figured out a way to knife Mike Johnson.
Now, that's the thing. He wanted vote after vote after vote, very similar to how he got it, that it would be to the point where the Republicans were so embarrassed at getting the criticism and laughter from the Democrats and the mainstream media about how dysfunctional the Republicans are, they would just say, the hell with it. Let's go back and pick McCarthy again, and he would be the speaker again. That's what this was all about. That's why he was sabotaging the other candidates. I mean, it's pretty self-serving.
And so he was worried that there was going to be this great unifying moment, and he scuttled the unifying moment. So because of McCarthy's objection, we had to have this 3-hour delay. And, candidates announce again, have another forum. And guess what happens during that delay, Steve? Patrick McHenry runs to the House floor, opens it up out of recess, and then adjourns till noon today. Now, why did he do that? Because they were setting up a play to block Mike Johnson with write-in votes in the intra-conference process for Kevin McCarthy.
And there you have it. Mike Johnson is a mega Republican. He's a very extremely devout Christian. I'm personally Roman Catholic. I'm not sure what denomination of Christian he is, but it doesn't matter. This guy is the real deal. For a religious conservative, this guy is the poster boy. You can go back on YouTube here and punch in Mike Johnson and see some of the things in question and he's done at committee meetings, approval for appointing people from the Biden administration through Congress. This guy is sharp as hell. Mike Johnson. He is sharp as hell. He's a former attorney from the state of Louisiana, tried a lot of cases. I believe he's a constitutional scholar as well. And I'll tell you the truth, it really worked out. It really did as far as I'm concerned. The Democrats screwed themselves, shot themselves in the foot. The Republicans shot themselves in the foot right along, but came out at the end of it smelling like a rose. Let's listen on.
They were promising people hearings on their favorite legislation, passage of bills. I heard people promised, maybe you'll get a chairmanship. And the play was for McCarthy to return as speaker and then Jim Jordan to be the deputy speaker in some sort of like Dwight Schrute assistant to the regional manager posture. And that would have been debasing to Jordan, someone I like a great deal, and it would have been empowering to McCarthy. So Garrett Graves and all these people are working to try to effectuate this return of McCarthy, and they're telling us they're going to be 100 votes for McCarthy on the write-in. You know how many there were? 33 on the first write-in. So they flame out terribly. Mike Johnson's gaining momentum.
Now, remember that. Oh, they're going to get 100. You got 33. Now watch what happens after this, what happens. And it's very interesting. When you have a congressional member that has to have, now this is a secret vote, so you didn't know who voted for what. But when your vote is made public, who you voted for, it's very interesting how your vote changes because you know you're wrong and you don't want anybody else to see it.
Ultimately, McCarthy gets 43 to vote for him on a secret ballot, but Mike Johnson gets a majority, and then he says, you know what I want? I want a roll call vote so that those 43 would have to announce themselves as being for a candidate who wasn't even running instead of a unifying force like Mike Johnson. And when we called for the roll call, do you know how many people voted for Kevin McCarthy? 0. He went from zero. So he went from promising 100 votes to delivering 43 to 0 willing to vote for him. And everyone in the room knew at that moment that I wasn't the force for chaos. I wasn't causing disunity. That for the last 3 weeks, the reason the House of Representatives has been paralyzed is because for his own selfish gain, Kevin McCarthy was sabotaging the candidacy of anyone else because he was plotting a return. And we stopped it. And in the place of Kevin McCarthy, we get a Bayou, Louisiana Mike Johnson.
And that's the long and the short of it. Yeah, was McCarthy pretty pissed that he got put out as speaker? Yeah, I would be too. I'm not going to deny the guy that. It's a big deal being Speaker of the House, as we saw from the power that he yields with Nancy Pelosi. We're going to the Capitol Police and January 6th and all that fiasco, but there's a lot of other things. Committee assignments, things that you want to push through, like investigations, and there's a ton of them to do. Speaker, in a lot of ways, has many powers, almost as much as the president. And the majority leader in the Senate has that same power. Majority leader in the Senate is basically the mirror image of the Speaker of the House in the House of Representatives. Now, okay, McCarthy's pissed. Well, like I said, I would be too. But to do this, though, I'm not really sure. I don't think it's proper. I think it shows McCarthy's true colors. I was not a big fan of his to begin with, but I was willing to give him a chance. And this is how it ended up. And as Matt Gaetz said, everybody saw it then when he objected. Everybody saw it. And they went, the old Italians, that's so. Okay. All right. Now we know what's really going on.
Brilliant constitutional attorney. He has been my seatmate in the House Judiciary Committee for 7 years. For 7 years, we have worked against the illegitimate impeachments, against the weaponization of this government. This guy did the toughest cases before the Louisiana Supreme Court. He is sharp. He will be as respected in the halls of in the homes of our most meaningful, righteous, and patriotic donors as he will at the rallies with our most enthusiastic and meaningful activists. It is going to be a great moment for the House. And you know what? At the very end, when some people didn't know if they could still even bring back McCarthy.
And there you have it. It worked out beautifully. The Republicans landed on their feet. And I do have to give praise to my congressman, my representative in Congress, Molinaro. Brilliantly done. Let's have a rule change when Stefanik objected, who's a colleague of his from New York as well. And it's because he is a freshman congressman that hasn't got set after 10, 20 years in Congress where you just don't think outside the box. You're still new, and you're not brainwashed by the system. So kudos to my representative, Molinaro. It started the rolling the stone down the hill, so to speak, to get this done. I think Mike Johnson is going to be an incredibly good speaker. I believe 98%, 99% of what he believes in. And he's an old school patriot. And so the Democrats went from Kevin McCarthy, who was a semi-rhino or full rhino, depending on your point of view, to a new speaker that's a MAGA Republican, devout Christian, and loves Donald Trump. Well done, Democrats. You really screwed the pooch on this one. So Matt Gaetz was right after all. Maybe the way he went about it, I don't approve sometimes, but what else could he have done? His options were limited. He had to get McCarthy out, and it really and truly worked out well. So kudos to my representative, Congressman Molinaro, and kudos to Matt Gaetz, who got some criticism from me as well. But you know what, though? In the end, he was right. And it made a positive change. I think a huge positive change. So hats off to Gaetz and Molinaro. They landed on their feet. So we're going to see what happens now. I think a lot of good things are going to come out of Johnson as Speaker. We can only hope and pray. Until next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.